Welcome. This is a special edition of the Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor, flipped sort of here. So my name's Tyler Burns, and I'm going to have the pleasure today of actually interviewing Greg Bateman. So for all those that enjoy Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor, this was an opportunity that I would like to take to kind of flip the script and get to know Greg himself. So welcome, Greg, to your own show.
Well, thank you. Well, it's your show today. But no, this is really exciting. I've been looking forward to this. Really interested that you have an interest in doing something like this. So let's have at it.
Yeah.
Nothing off topic or nothing.
Fair enough. Where were you on the night of? No. We'll
probably in bed asleep.
Ease into this a little bit. For me, it was very much an idea of when I got to see these and watch you kind of complete these over the last couple of years. It really just struck a chord for me to say, hey, well, let's see where Greg started from. So I know you've kind of done some history in the past, but really for me, it was kind of, let's start at the beginning. Your connections to Lagodi was in terms of your parents from here, or what was the start?
Yeah, really they were. My father actually was born over in Danville, Illinois, but had a few months in Hoopeston, which is a very interesting story because 84 years later, about 3 weeks ago, we were able to take him to Hoopeston, and
saw the old homestead spot.
He did, and he really enjoyed that, and we got to meet his cousin, and that was a thrill. But he moved to Lagodi at a very, very young age, and my mom lived in Lagodi all her life, except for a brief stint in Indianapolis.
Okay.
So the Lagodi connection is pure. I mean, we were born and bred in this area. Me at Davis County Hospital in Washington, and outside of a few stints out of Lagodi, we've been here most of our lives.
Most of your lives. Well, fantastic. Now, myself, I'm a transplant.
Yeah.
I've moved in, so really the series was a chance for me to kind of see that history for the city and just kind of get to know. Now, as far as your childhood, siblings-wise, I know we got to see Mark's from last year and whatnot, but tell us about your family. Let's hear a little bit about.
Let's see. I would be the fourth of six.
Okay.
So Mark, who you mentioned, who actually originated this entire idea, he would be the oldest, and he's out in Tucson, Arizona, has been for years. And my next oldest would be Kevin. Kevin lived most of his life in Minneapolis, Minnesota, before moving back here a few years ago, not too many. Then third in line was Randy. And Randy also lived in Arizona much of his life before coming back here about 5 years ago. And then myself. And then, so there were four boys for the longest time. And then I guess there was maybe an 8-year age gap, something like that, between myself and my sister, Samantha.
Yeah.
So we always say, they had four boys, and then they finally have a girl. They name her Sam.
No.
Hey. I know. I don't know why, but they did. And then the youngest is Chris.
Okay.
Chris, he went into the service, but he's been here in Lagodi most all of his life. And Chris just had a grandchild, very first one. So we've got a big family. All of us kind of moving pieces throughout our life, but most of us, in fact, all of us at this point, except for Mark, have ended up right back here in Lagodi.
Yeah. Now, I mean, even Mark mentions, when he's not talking about it's not going back to Lagodi, it's going back home. And so even still, it sounds like this is kind of got that.
Yeah, he recently retired in Tucson. And I know when he was home recently, I think more than ever, he felt like, you know what, this is home. You never know. Right. But he's made Tucson his home for a long time, and he and Kim. So I don't think he'd have a permanent residence here, but you never know.
Good enough to call home. Yeah,
absolutely.
And as far as your childhood, I mean, close with your siblings. I mean, I know in terms of adulthood, things in terms of life sometimes pulls everybody apart. But growing up, you felt a tight bond with all six. I mean,
well, a very tight bond. Although I kind of look at it where I was in the family as the fourth of six, is almost two families.
Yeah.
Because our youngest Chris, I guess, when he came aboard, my brother Mark was just about ready to graduate high school and move on. So he didn't know Mark all that well, until he got to be much older. But very, very tight. Tight enough to fight, just like siblings do.
Of course.
Tight enough to, have your own ball team almost, and a basketball team or what have you. So we did a lot together. Mark, being the oldest, probably was out on his own a little bit more than the rest of us. But it was a very tight, and still is a very tight family.
Yeah, awesome. In terms of those growing up experiences, I mean, Was it very, I'm assuming athletics driven? I mean, in terms of I look at your life and I see how much sports means to you and kind of what you've done with the direction of your life. I mean, I'm assuming that started at a very young age.
It did, and yeah, when you say athletics driven, that's a good way to put it. Or sports driven, I guess. I don't know that we were all the most athletic, but yeah, but sports was the draw for the most part.
Yeah.
You know, you talk to, and I've talked to many people who grew up in Lagodi, and what did they do? Same thing we did. You know, you get out and you find a baseball game, wiffle ball, or whatever it may be. Find a basketball court. You know, the swimming pool was big for all of us when we grew up. We'd make our way there. Everybody seemed to have season passes. Now today, everybody has their own pool, it seems. But back then, that was a big draw. It was a social draw.
Oh, yeah.
But it was also just, you know, on a hot summer day, that's where you go.
You end up, I think I picture Sandlot. You know, it's those times of when generationally it was just the ability to get a group of people, kids together, and this is what we're going to play today. Let's see what we're going to get into trouble wise.
We did well. No, we didn't get in a lot of trouble that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, our neighbors, Bernie and Nancy Truelove.
Okay.
Bernie was part of a Little League coach along with my dad, who coached our Little League team. So we had a lot of equipment.
Yeah.
And Bernie built a field, a baseball field, out in his kind of farm field, just across the street from us. And so you can imagine, I mean, they had a big backstop and had bases and the dirt infield. And I mean, we were able to get out there, and we had the north side against the south side. And I know, again, these are stories that people I grew up with remember.
Right.
But those are the things, you know, when you think back, what are the instant things you think of whenever you're 10, 11, 12-year-old? Yeah, it's Little League. It's forming those baseball games. It's going to basketball games and such. So it did, you're right. Yeah. It almost all revolved around athletics in some sense.
Now, you know, with you being 4 of 6 in terms of, like you said, that kind of almost the duality of the family, like there's a second. Did you find yourself in a leadership role for them? Or, I mean, was it one where you're that kind of middle ground almost in terms of age where you, the one they turn to as the younger siblings, as kind of that branch between?
I think so. I really do. I really never thought of it too much in that way, but me being the last of 4, so I was probably closer to those 2, Sam and Chris, than the others were, and then they moved away.
Yeah.
And you know, I still, to this day, you know, I'm sure they don't so much appreciate it, but look at me, look at myself as their big brother, you know, so kind of watching out over them, even though they don't need it.
Right.
But still, at the same time, you know, I just want to make sure that everything goes well for them, and they've lived a great life. Yeah. And but yeah, I think that I've kind of been that person who's been able to watch over them, I guess, probably more so than the older siblings. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, family-wise, your parents. I know your dad's a popular man among town. I see him out and about, definitely walking and getting his laps in around this city square.
Yeah.
I mean, good relationships growing up with them as far as mom and dad.
Amazing. Yeah. You know, every time somebody sees dad and sees me, and they say, "Boy, you should only hope to look that good when you're his age." And
no, the man is a good-looking guy. I don't know if anybody.
I would only hope to look good at my age. You know, I mean, yeah, he's amazing. He's slowed down, as we all have a little bit, but still gets out. He goes to the gym and he walks and he drives everywhere he wants. But yeah, he's amazing. And our relationship with our parents never wavered. Every one of us. It's just been an amazing ride so far.
Yeah, and truly blessed. I mean, in order to be able to look back and have that reflection to say, hey, look, this is now, and excuse my ignorance, as mom has passed?
Mom passed in 2010.
Okay.
And yeah, you know, that was very difficult. Mom was a mom.
Right.
You know, and
stay at home, or did she?
Well, she did a lot of things. She stayed at home at times, but she worked in the cafeteria at Crane. I think she worked in the cafeteria up here at the school. She worked in the deli at Bueller's IGA. Probably my youngest memory of her working was, you won't remember it, but it was the old textile. People watching will. Over there by the new library right across the street.
Okay.
But that was a textile at one time, factory. So she worked there, as did a lot of women in town. Gosh, I'm sure I'm forgetting.
Somewhere along there.
Yeah, somewhere along the line. And she was, you know, you talk about athletes. She was an athlete. She was an avid golfer, tennis player, very good, very much of a competitor. And yeah, up until actually very soon before she passed away. I mean, she was out there playing golf. And took it all in. But Yeah, a big loss for us, but we were so blessed to be in her life and her in ours.
For
Yeah.
have that so long, of course. In terms of athletics, for her to be sort of in those things, did you look to her, or there, as far as kind of, I didn't know if Dad was also, I'm assuming, into sports. It seems.
Yeah, Dad was a very good athlete, and Dad in high school, but no, didn't really look to them because when we were growing up, they didn't do much athletically. They didn't golf. They didn't, they worked
All right.
and raised us. It was really after they retired where they really got
Got
into
that
those,
chance.
and we were up and gone.
They'd be pickleballers today, is what you're saying.
Well, Mom would definitely,
Yeah.
and Dad would too. You're
Yeah.
exactly right. They would love pickleball.
I'm sure.
But yeah, it was in later years that they kind of got back when they had time.
Well, yeah, you're raising children, and
Yeah.
especially six. I mean, that's definitely kind. I've got two myself, and I'm time consumption. I could see.
Yeah.
You know,
Now, we don't know how they did it. I mean,
well, sometimes you look back, and you just don't really. It's hard to process, to wrap your head
Yeah.
around, to go, how did they manage all these
yeah,
people
and we always lived
and kept us all, alive and fit and all the
well,
things.
and you didn't even think about it. I mean, you just had everything you needed.
Yeah.
Um, I don't remember looking really at anybody else's house, anybody else's car, that they had more than what we did, but they did. Some did, but we lived in a very, very small house. At least the four of us and Mom and Dad. Then they moved actually almost right behind you here at Harvest Health, up on a hill on East Washington Street,
Okay.
and that's where we grew up for the most part. Um, and that was a decent sized house for the people that we had.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing, and everybody that I've talked to, kind of the same thing. It's how did we do that? How did Mom and Dad do that? And your kids will say the same
Yeah.
thing someday.
Someday
I
they'll
don't know how Mom and Dad raised us.
It's a question I'm sure they might have occasionally.
And you might not have an answer right now,
Sometimes.
but you will.
Oh shoot.
Yeah.
Really, for your parents, story-wise, did you ever get growing up, like what brought them together? What was the kind of the catalyst that started the whole, in terms of your section of the Bateman crew? Like,
Yeah. We're a little fortunate, I think, to know our background a little bit. As you know, I've talked to you about, when I started this, it was more of let's get to know your neighbor. But as we got into it, it was more of let my guest figure out about his family,
All right.
And then also be able to have this on video forever, and so that his or her children and grandchildren can watch it. So that's what I'm hoping here as well,
Yeah.
that my grandchildren watch this years from now, and these very questions you're asking me. So, I mean, they both lived in Lagodi. One went to St. John's High School. My mom did, which is Catholic.
Yeah.
My dad went to the public school in Lagodi. And they just caught each other's eye in high school. And
the rest is history.
it is. Dad went off to the service actually when he was 16 years old.
Okay.
And Mom had graduated high school. And Dad was stationed in Roswell, New Mexico. He was in the Korean conflict, I guess, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And Mom was out there with him, and that's where they had their first child, Mark, in Roswell, New Mexico.
Okay.
But
so
then,
the Western ties there's a little
well,
bit of
there is, yeah, but Mark wouldn't remember any of that.
Yeah.
In fact, I asked Mark about that in the interview, and he just said he just remembers being among the aliens out there, and that was it.
Ingrained somewhere deep is probably that the desire for the desert, possibly. Yeah.
It may be. Yeah.
Now, in terms of as their relationship, as you guys progressed, I mean, did you see? I mean, that bond grow over the years. I mean, in terms of, I'm assuming it's both Catholic, if I imagine, and then
Dad became
church.
Catholic. He wasn't. Dad later became Catholic in life. So that was a big part of our lives. I guess growing up as children, we didn't really. I don't believe we really went to church all that often. On special occasions, we did.
Mm-hmm.
And then later in life, Mom and Dad both became very devout, and so. We sort of followed suit.
Yeah.
And now, of course, Lynn and I are very much so into the Catholic faith.
Yeah.
And Mom and Dad certainly Dad still is, and Mom was until the day she passed.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, in terms of you get these moments, like you said, this is that chance for your grandchildren and their grandchildren to kind of have these reflection moments and to preserve these stories. Myself, my grandfather's 98 years old, and it is one where we take those moments and you say, hey, how can I let my kids and then their kids get to know this history?
Mm-hmm.
So, really opportunity-wise for us is to flip the script for you to have those chances to kind of to get those moments to say, back when I was a kid, this was how it was. So, for you and getting into adolescence, I mean, that sports bug, I'm assuming, started with basketball or baseball, those kind of the T-balls as we work our way in. But what was it that really kind of drove that to be that little light that lights inside you when, you're the voice of the
Yeah.
Lagodi Lions?
I never remember not loving sports. My dad was a St. Louis Cardinal fan, so we grew up St. Louis Cardinal fans. So we were fortunate maybe to get over to St. Louis once a year. I have an aunt on my dad's side that has lived in St. Louis, still does, but even back in those days lived there. So we would go visit her, and of course get a ball game in.
Yeah.
And here we would listen to the games on the radio, and it happened to be at a time in my life when I was 6 years old and the Cardinals were in the World Series, and 7 years old the Cardinals were in the World Series again.
Yeah.
So you're really drawn into that.
It's striking hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of TV, so it's radio. So I'm listening to the Harry Careys,
Your sportscasters. Yeah.
and the Jack Bucks, and yeah, I mean, I just started imitating them, and as a lot of announcers do, you'll start to maybe, I remember being downstairs in the basement with a sock and a basketball goal and announcing the state finals in basketball of myself and four other team members and a team maybe from Scottsburg or whatever that I just made up the names.
Yeah.
It didn't matter.
No, yeah.
And I was always the leading scorer and made the last shot. And we won the state championship.
Hey, you're gonna write your own story. I mean,
write your own script. But yeah, that wasn't unusual. And then I would have a baseball, maybe a rubber ball that I would throw up against the wall, and I'd be the shortstop, which I later was in the high school team, and always made the plays, never made an error. But in my mind, I was actually
we can find those stats, I'm sure.
No, no stats. But in my mind, I really didn't think about at that time going into broadcasting. It was just having fun with the game.
Yeah.
And that was my way to have fun and interaction with the game. And I really never stopped that. It's funny. I just did an interview with Don Fisher, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers. Yeah. And I asked him that question about simulating his stars because Harry Carey was his guy. And his funny story to me was in high school. He was in the outfield. He was bored. And he would be, under his breath, there's a ground ball to short while he's in the game.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I never did do that. Yeah. But that's the thing that people who are really invested in the sport and kind of drawn to the announcing part, that's kind of what we do.
Yeah. Well, growing up, I mean, Jack Buck, Harry Carey, you've got these guys in terms of iconic voices. I mean, personally, me, like the Al Michaels of the football generation, now never of a stature that was going to find me in the games, but one where I thought, the ability to be able to describe these things, and especially in a time, we harken back before the TV where you had that visual, but I mean, radio-wise, you've got to be able to describe it, you've got to be able to convey that passion, and those moments that were when somebody's walking off on the World Series home run, you've got to be able to kind of convey that energy across it. So.
You do. And what I remember about listening to the radio is you felt like you were at the game the way they described it.
Right.
I mean, they might mention, the weather, what the weather was like around the stadium at that time, the red shirts, the blue shirts, and in your mind, you're just picturing this exactly. And I never forgot that, to try to describe to the listener what they can't see.
Right.
So that if they were there, right or wrong, that's what they picture.
Right.
And I think that was so important for me to be able to enjoy the ball games that hopefully, in some sense, I can do that to our listeners today.
Yeah. Now, as far as high school, I assume it's sports careers ended as far as those things. Did any aspirations that were ever to go beyond that, or just athletically, you kind of knew where you fell as far as?
I kind of knew where I fell. Yeah. Actually, what happened was that really, I guess, I dropped back in athletics was in 6th grade and in 8th grade, I had rheumatic fever. So both times I was out of school for a period of time. And the doctor, Dr. Lett, as everybody would know who's of my age, advised me that it probably wouldn't be a good idea to play basketball because, of course, of the conditioning and such, because I did have a heart murmur. But baseball was fine. So I didn't play basketball. I would have loved to play for Coach Butcher, but even then, I look back and I thought, I'm not sure I would have been a Coach Butcher type of player and athletic enough. But I love baseball, and Tim Nante was our coach, and Coach Nante was very passionate about baseball, and I think Coach Nante took an interest in me. In fact, he was very instrumental in my growth of sports and in baseball. When I did have rheumatic fever, I remember laying in bed and he would bring down a baseball bat that he gave me, from the team, I
Okay.
guess. And of course, at
Yeah.
that time, that was great.
Yeah.
And not only that, but videos or tapes or reels or whatever they were back then of, I think maybe some of the basketball games and pep sessions and such. So, Coach Nante, I know you'll watch this, and I'll love you forever and be so grateful. But he was very much an inspiration in my life.
Well, it's beautiful. I mean, those were the beauty of life is to be able to reflect and to see those individuals who take the time that not necessarily was something that if he didn't have to do those things, right? I mean, in terms of the moments, like to be able to say, here's a kid that's fighting this, and I got plenty of other things to do, but to have and to inspire you. I mean, if it's not athletics yourself, but you're clearly involved in the world of sports. I mean, I've been announcing now, but those are the types of stories that just kind of make your heart sing. Is to be able to reflect and go, I appreciate this person for being able to provide me, whatever small little moments then mattered then, but now,
That's right. You look back on them.
30, 40 years later,
Yeah.
you get to look back and go, really that was a changing moment for you.
And like you said, he didn't have to do that.
No.
And I remember Miss Ackerman coming down and tutoring me at home. Miss Ackerman, one of my all-time favorite teachers, and she was a big IU fan. So in our lessons, we would always have something about Lee Corso. That's who she loved, and IU football or IU basketball.
Tie it together, yeah.
Yeah, and so I had those people in my life that even then, and I never ever, and I would say today to my credit, but I never thought back then, I never ever thought that was something that would stop me in anything.
Right.
But I think it was because the people around me were able to allow me to feel like I was leading a life, even though I was inside. But people cared about me.
Yeah.
And I knew that even back then.
And feel as normal as in terms of you're able to see these other individuals your age go out and do these things, but it necessarily health-wise prevents those from.
You mentioned that. The only time I remember thinking, man, I was in the 8th grade. I was at home with rheumatic fever, and there was an 8th grade dance. Now I couldn't dance, can't dance, never could dance, but I wanted to go to the dance.
Yeah.
But I knew I couldn't.
The wallflower. That's every dance needs a wallflower.
Well, I would have been my buddies, and we'd have done something silly. It wouldn't have been with a girl. It would have just been playing around. But what was so special that I'll always remember is a group of about 5 or 6 of my classmates after the dance, during the dance. I don't know, but they came up to the house. And they included me in that evening.
Right.
So it was just a great time. And again, you think back on those things, how special they are. And I'm sure at the time they didn't think, hey, let's go make Greg feel better.
Right.
But hey, it was probably, why don't we just go up and see Greg?
See how he's doing. He wasn't able to come.
Yeah, and that's how many years was that? It was 50 years ago, and just appreciate it so much.
Well, and lessons for everyone in those situations. I mean, we live in such a busy world. I mean, it's such a go pace that people tend to, you forget about those small little ripples that you can create. That if you do those one little positive thing, and if it's just stopping by after a dance to say hi to somebody that wasn't able to come, and we're 10 years, 50 years later, and we're going, hey, what really mattered to me was that those guys took the time to do those things.
And you know what? I bet if you asked each and every one of them, they wouldn't remember it.
Right.
I never have.
Yeah.
But I'll bet you that they would not remember it.
It was just a blip in their memories, but for you, it truly means something. So,
absolutely.
And for me, coming and I'm from Terre Haute. We'll get into your college career here in a little bit. A West Terre Hautian growing up, very small town feel as well. Knew that I liked that feeling as a child, that community. I think the old saying, a small city with a big heart is kind of Lagodi's. Without knowing that phrase, that was what growing up in my small town was like. So for us and my family, my wife, Erin Birch, was Lagodian. So when we got married, decided to start our family, moved back here, it was very much the feel of where I wanted my children to kind of know what that community was like, to have those, so that in 30 years that they'd kind of be able to look back and say, well, they probably don't remember these little things, but it meant a lot to me. We moving back was one for, as a transplant, I like to say, was a transition period. Lagodi's a very tight-knit community, and somebody coming from the outside was in the beginning a very much unknown, if that was a way to describe it. So it took a few years for me to kind of work my way into the city itself. But
But you were very fortunate though, because you married into a beloved
oh, very
family
much so.
in Lagodi, and Erin, of course, has always had a special place in our hearts. She
Yeah,
was very good friends with my daughter, still is.
yeah,
Graduated together, and Erin was just, and still is,
yeah,
just a ball of energy,
yeah.
and I've always loved her. But I guess my point is that if you were coming into another family that really wasn't social, that might make it more
Yeah, a
difficult
little
for you.
harder. Yeah.
But the Birch family is about as social as you can get.
There, yeah, I'll forever be Martin Birch's son-in-law. So that's one where I've got no
Yeah,
problems with that title whatsoever. I
yeah,
mean, it's a great family to be part of,
it
and
is.
it's one to see the impact that we can, as we raise our children here, to have the impact in that community,
Hmm.
and hopefully for generationally
Yeah,
continue that small city with a big heart feel.
yeah,
I mean, it's something that takes effort. I
yeah,
mean, it's not something that just happens. The people of the community have to be able to buy into that idea
yeah,
of, we are small but mighty, and
yeah.
as the lions are, we're going to
Hmm.
roar if we
Yeah.
if we need to. So
But every time I drive up the highway here at the railroad tracks and I look at the billboards and I see on one side Harvest Health, I see on the other side Hawkins Healthcare. Well, again, my daughter was best friends with Brooke Deerwester at the time,
yeah,
and Aaron. And I look at that and I'm just so proud, because I don't think that was intentional that they're right next to each
right.
other. But two kids like that were such good friends to my daughter, making such an impact in the community. And that's what you want to do, and that's what I want to do, and hopefully we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it just the small ripples. I mean, everything is just those tiny little things that hopefully, as they spread out, and it be it joy or be it happiness, that we can kind of provide the community.
Mm-hmm.
Our conversation today, being that one for the history books, is my idea of. I love the idea of capturing these stories. Now, for you, you progress through high school. It's automatically Indiana State as far as choices
Yeah,
go.
yeah. I never really thought, I mean, it was economical
Yeah,
at the time.
yeah.
It was kind of the Lagodi thing as well. Larry Bird had just left there, and
Hmm.
of course, kind of a local product. We all followed Larry Bird through his career. So, um, much like now, many people go to USI.
Yeah.
At that point, it was Vincennes University or Indiana State University, and Indiana State also had a radio, television, film, so communications. That's what I wanted to get into. But it was economical, and I never remember thinking about anywhere else. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it's
maybe I should have.
yeah, not at all. The Sycamore bleed blue. I'm a
Yeah,
Sycamore graduate as well, so
yeah,
it's definitely am. My first career was teaching for Indiana State, and that was one where
yeah,
I definitely I feel a closeness to the university. So to meet a fellow Sycamore,
hmm,
and one that was a few generations prior to mine,
yeah.
but time wise there in Terre Haute, stories wise, anything that's stands out to you over those years that had an impact in you?
Well, actually, the biggest one was I met my wife there.
Well,
Met
yeah,
Lynn there.
yeah.
I had a couple of classmates, Dora Lindsay and Joni Harder, that also went to Indiana State,
Okay.
and those who went to Indiana State might. But I want to talk about dorms a little bit, because
Yeah.
they stayed at Burford Hall. I don't
Yeah.
know if there is still a Burford Hall. I was in Jones Hall. Were you on
I didn't
campus,
live
or?
on campus,
I didn't
no,
think so.
but I mean,
Okay.
I'm familiar
Yeah.
with a few of the
Very,
dorms,
very
so
much so. Yeah.
yeah.
But anyway, so they were in the same hall as, at the time, Lynn Decker,
Okay.
who was my wife, and she grew up in Bingle, Indiana. Any idea where that is?
I know that you got me on that one. That's
Most people don't.
yeah,
It's like if you'd ask about Lagodi.
yeah. That's what I was
But it's kind of out in farm country near. She went to Southwestern Shelby High School.
Okay.
It's between Franklin and Shelbyville,
Okay.
so not too far from Indianapolis. So that's where she came from, and I'm sure as I was visiting them, I don't recall the exact time we met, but I'm sure as we were visiting them, they introduced me in some form or fashion,
Yeah.
and we went on our first date there, um, at the movie theater. What, Indiana Theater? Is that still
It's
there?
still there.
Still there?
Yeah.
We saw Kramer versus Kramer.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that
Okay.
was pretty heavy for the
Yeah,
first
for a
date.
first date. Yeah.
But I remember we, just silly, but this is how well we got along even after that first date. We were on our way home and stopped at a payphone, one you have to put a coin in, and called a friend of Lynn's back at the dorm. Lynn did, and said, "Hey, this didn't work out. Greg left me, and I'm here, and can you come get me? And I mean, it's silly now, but again, it's something to think about.
Yeah.
That we laughed about. And uh, everybody knows you have to have things that we found out right away. We got the similar sense of humor.
Yeah.
Maybe not the same.
Yeah.
But a similar.
It's got
sense
some
of humor.
ties there, at least.
It had some ties, and just it's just one of those things where I caught myself even back in Lagodi during the summer, just thinking about her all the time.
Yeah.
I doubt she felt the same at the time, but it's lasted for over 40 years now.
And it's beautiful. I mean, honestly, I mean, feather in your hat as far as that takes a lot of I mean, grit and ability to the great times are the great times, but to be able to survive the struggles. And I know with Lynn's health in terms of a few years ago, that really is those moments that you kind of get to reflect and say how beautiful it was these last.
Yeah, not only that, a few years ago, and what happened a few years ago, Lynn had developed a couple of TIAs or mini strokes or so, and the doctor said, you know what, you've got a problem here. We better go in and try to correct that because the next one could be the major stroke. And we were down at Louisville Norton Hospital, one of the best doctors in the world. And basically, he went into her brain and connected what he needed to connect, and got out of there.
Squared up.
And it squared up. And obviously, she's as healthy as you and I. Well, you're healthier, both of us. But even Lynn had developed diabetes early on. She had gestational diabetes.
Okay.
And with Lynn's pregnancy, I remember we were in Fort Wayne and being in the hospital, ready to go in and while Lynn delivered the baby. And then they came out and they said, I had my scrubs on and everything. And they said, no, we're the baby's backwards, the baby's breached, and we need to focus on this.
Right.
And your thoughts go to, are we going to lose the baby? Are we going to lose Lynn and the baby?
Yeah.
And that was just very, very interesting time, and we got through it. And Lynn has battled diabetes and doing very well with it. But yeah, when you talk about some of those struggles, those are things you look back and think, well, if it went another way, your life goes another way.
Exactly.
But fortunately, things turned out.
Oh, and very blessed to be able to say so. And it's fantastic, guys, meeting in college. I mean, from there, was it a much finished college together as in terms of couple wise, and then this is where we're going to attack life together?
Yeah, it's exactly right. It's one of those to where you were together so much, you're each other's best friend that, by the time you're probably done with our junior year, we knew, that we were going to be married at some point. I remember proposing to her at, I want to say some of you remember, but I think it was the Heritage House restaurant or Heritage Inn restaurant in Jasper. Dr. Riker's office is there now, right as you go into Jasper on the right side. And my mom and dad happened to be there. So that's, it wasn't anything fancy, just proposed to her, but we knew pretty well, I can't even remember. Maybe she helped pick out the ring. I can't even recall that. But you're right. It was something that was kind of implied 1 week after we graduated. We didn't even go through graduation ceremonies at Indiana State because we were preparing for their wedding.
Oh.
Because
bigger things to go.
Bigger things.
Yeah.
And she had already accepted a job.
Okay.
She was a packaging engineer major at Indiana State. So we knew, and I was in radio. I was working in radio there in Terre Haute. And we knew at the beginning she was going to make more money than me, and I was okay with that.
Yeah.
So let's follow her job. And she actually got a job at the Toby Hanna Army Depot in Scranton, Pennsylvania, in the Poconos.
Yeah.
And okay,
let's go to Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Let's do that. So we got married in Shelbyville, Indiana, in 1983, and a week after graduation, and had our reception out at Lynn's parents' house, which was just beautiful outside reception. And then from there, we took off on our honeymoon, and shortly after that, we found ourselves a place we'd never been in our life, the Poconos.
The Poconos.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
How long was a packaging career? I mean, for Lynn, how long did that?
Not that long, actually. She, I guess long is relative, but she worked at the Toby Hanna Army Depot for the government. We were in Scranton maybe even 10 months. But it was almost like a vacation because we got to go to New York City, to Philadelphia, to
You've got all those.
Cooperstown,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania,
Oh
all
yeah.
of that right around there, D.C. But then, and I worked there in radio. It really wasn't hard to get a radio job.
It's everywhere,
Yeah.
as far as those things go. It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Kind of a dime a
Somebody
dozen.
can go from 12 to 3 a.m. They can
Somebody
stay,
can. Somebody can, yeah. So I would always be able to get a job in radio, and we had a kind of a plan to get back in the Midwest within 5 years, and there was a job in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Magnavox,
Okay.
that again packaging,
Yeah.
and actually then female engineers were in big supply,
Yeah.
high demand, and so we went there again.
Smart cookie. I
Yes.
mean, she's definitely
Yes.
a smart cookie.
Yes.
For
And I was smart enough to be humble enough to know
realize that. Yeah, that's I feel
Yeah.
you there. I understand. Very much in that boat. You see a shining star, you go, well,
That's right.
Yeah.
You take
you
it.
got a good one.
You take it. You guide me, and I'll take you home.
Yeah.
But so we moved to Fort Wayne, and that's where we had Perry
Okay.
in the hospital up there. And I guess we were there for about 3 years. And I remember working in radio there, but I wanted to get back to Lagodi, and I don't remember Lynn saying I want to go to Lagodi because she didn't grow up here.
Yeah.
But I don't remember her ever thinking otherwise, either. Just kind of wherever the job took us.
Yeah.
So I remember Lagodi then was kind of new at the radio station. Didn't know how small it was.
Yeah.
I was working in a decent sized radio station in Fort Wayne. And, but so I remember writing, or however I did it back then, to the Lagodi radio station. And I don't think I ever heard anything back.
Send out that old test letter to
Right.
interested in a.
Yeah. But my degree was in radio TV film, which was communications. So somewhere along the line, I thought about Kimball, because Kimball, a huge employer in this area. And so I wrote to Kimball, sent a resume, and got a call and said, hey, what do you think about doing human resources? And, I think back then they really called it personnel, personnel, human resources. And I was, I don't know, 26 years old. Never thought about it, but it was an opportunity to come back to Lagodi.
Take a leap.
It was night shift.
Oh.
Night shift.
Night shift personnel.
Yeah, for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So that worked out.
Yeah.
At Kimball Electronics.
Yeah.
And then Lynn, some of you remember this, but while I came down in 1987 to work at Kimball Electronics, Lynn then left her job, of course, to come with me, but her dream was to actually start a clothing store in Lagodi.
Okay.
Or a clothing store, ended up being Lagodi. And it was called Perry's Fashion Place. And I'll tell you where it was.
Wow.
You won't know this, but it was. It was where, for those of you who remember, the old Kennedy's grocery store was. So right across from the square next to the barber shop.
Yeah.
So we had a little fashion place there. And, it's something that Lynn was able to stay home with the baby, or the baby was able to come with her, Perry. And about 6 months in, though, Lynn had this degree, and she
you
also
get the itch a little bit.
And she also applied to Kimball, and she got an engineering job. Again, females were in high demand, and Lynn was a very good one. And so she worked at Kimball day shift, while I worked night shift. With an infant child.
Yeah.
So I remember, I think you and I might have had this conversation, and parents do what they have to do, right? And you don't even think about it.
Right.
Well, at that point, I remember I would go in at 9 o'clock at night, get off at 6 in the morning. Lynn would go in at 2 o'clock in the morning because she was the liaison between third shift.
So she was the connector, yeah.
She was. So what do you do with the baby? Well, Donna Green.
Sorry, Perry. I don't know what they did with
you. Yeah, she didn't care. What are we going to do with this kid?
Yeah.
But Dee Green and her husband, Bill, had a house right up next to the school. It unfortunately burned down. But so Lynn would take Perry about 1:30 in the morning, walk her up the stairs, so they were able to open the house for her, walk her up the stairs, put her in bed, leave. I would come home at 6:15, get about 3 hours sleep, go get the baby,
pick her up, and
her name was Perry. I
Yeah,
keep saying
here's the baby.
you know. Uh, Go get Perry and try to stay awake
Yeah, yeah.
until Lynn got home, because Lynn got home about 11,
Okay.
and then of course she would have to sleep.
Yeah.
So we did that for a number of years, and I'm sure that was difficult. But again,
Oh,
as you
boy.
think back on it, it's you do what you got to
You do
do.
what
You
you
know, and
gotta
so
do.
many of you out there have experienced similar things, and you
Yeah.
wonder how you did it.
Day by day.
You just did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, day by day.
I mean, literally,
Yeah,
like
you're
just
exactly
you
right.
knew. And then thankful for the community around you that be able to allow you.
Exactly.
I mean, how many babysitters can
Yeah.
you drop off at? You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. If I lived in Indianapolis or St. Louis or wherever, would we ever be able to do that and
have
feel
that
comfortable?
and feel
No.
yeah.
No.
No, that's. I
Yeah.
mean, it's nice.
So the Kimball gig worked out pretty good.
Yeah.
I finally went to day shift 10 years later.
Yeah, it took you a
And
decade.
yeah, you know what? It and actually became their HR director down there for a little while. And so I was there 23 years. And
Now, did you go back education-wise to pick up? I mean, I know radio, TV, film. I'm assuming not too much personnel or HR in your experience there. More learn on the job, sort of.
it was learn on the job.
Yeah.
Definitely learn on the job.
Yeah.
I think what helped me was communications. I mean,
That's people. I mean, you're
It's
talking.
people.
It's the ability to communicate, and yeah.
and not even all HR people have that.
Right.
You know, we know that.
Yeah.
But it's a key ingredient. You've got to be able
Yeah.
to deal with people and in a way that they respect you.
Yeah.
And some did, probably some didn't. But yeah, I was able to work my way through. And of course, you have a relationship with your coworkers as well. I mean, because that's what they are.
Yeah.
And when they feel like there's somebody you can talk to, then so I felt like I was pretty good at it as far as that side was concerned.
Yeah.
And enjoyed my time.
Well, 23 years. I mean, you clearly, hopefully, liked it. I mean, it's if you dedicated yourself to that,
Yeah. I did, but then we went through. Kimball went through a lot of downsizing, which was not unusual, certainly at that time. And I find when I talk about communications, I was kind of always the one that had to talk to people, and let them know that, I'm sorry. I know after 20 years or
This is
17
the-
years, and
Yeah.
here's what's going on. And
The bearer of the bad news.
so you're the bearer of the bad news, and that weighs on you.
Oh, for sure.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So I was never downsized myself. Maybe at some point I would have been, but so I started looking for something else, and saw an ad in the newspaper for Crane Credit Union HR.
Oh,
Hey,
hey.
I've never worked at a bank. I'm terrible with numbers,
But I got people.
but I've got people I
Yeah.
can work with, and you know who was instrumental, I think, in getting me that job? Two people. Don Bowling,
Okay.
of course, the former mayor
Yeah.
of Lagodi, and Kenny Greenwell.
Oh, yeah.
Kenny is still on the board at Crane Credit Union, but they were both references. Or Don was a reference. I
Yeah.
think Kenny just knew a little bit about me.
From there.
Yeah, and they fortunately said very good things about me.
Yeah. Fortunately.
Fortunately. So I get the job and I wonder, okay, what am I going to do at a bank?
Now I got to
Credit
do
union?
it. Yeah.
But it was at the corporate office, so it really was dealing more with hiring,
Okay.
things that you really are involved in HR, not just out on the factory floor or what
Right.
have you. So that was a wonderful 10 years, and so wonderful I was able to retire. somewhat early.
That's even better, right? Yeah. That's the best kind. That's the ones you get to just bid you do and have the cake and call it
So I
square.
probably skipped a lot of the things you wanted to cover, went right to retirement. But
Here we are, right? Now, for that, those types of where you're kind of taking those leaps of faith. Now, did Lynn stay with Kimball throughout this
Well,
period?
Lynn was there also more than 20 years, but then she started having the health problems, and her job was there was a lot of pressure.
stress.
Yeah, a lot of stress.
Yeah.
A lot of stress, and with her condition, you can't have stress.
Right.
She
No.
would not have survived it.
No.
We all knew that. She knew
She
that.
looks like she's meant for a school.
Oh,
I
my
don't
God.
mean that as.
Oh, my
I
God.
mean, my mother was a
Yeah.
school teacher, 35 plus years.
Yeah.
I look at Lynn, I go, that is a second grade teacher.
Yeah.
That's-
And she's not a teacher.
No, I know,
But-
but I just
but she could be.
the energy and the
Yeah.
the way she approaches kids
Yeah.
and just being interacting with her, like
No, I mean, as I said in my Facebook post, God has been with us every step of the way, and that more than any, I think, because even though it was a very difficult time for her and all of us from her health standpoint, it allowed her to leave that stressful job, some time off, And then this opportunity came up to be I think a title aide at Lagodi schools, and that was maybe 6 years ago. That's
Yeah.
7 years, whatever it may have been. And you're right. I mean, it was just meant to
Yeah.
be.
Oh, my kids love her. I
Her
mean,
and children.
it's greeting them at the door as they walk in.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things on Facebook that I showed Lynn from the response that people got because they love Lynn, and it was Jessica Sheets, and I'm probably going to embarrass her
No,
son
that's all right.
because I don't know how old he is, but Lynn opens the door for him, when comes to school or I guess goes home or whatever.
Yeah.
And she says it's not that he can't open the door. He certainly can.
Yeah.
But he likes to see Lynn come open the door
And open for him. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so funny, like when people know me in this town, right?
Yeah.
Adults, but kids, they don't care.
No, you're just. Yeah.
I'm outside.
Yeah.
Hi, Mrs. Bateman. I remember one time, and I was in the house and I could hear, and a kid would walk by. We had the window open, and that's where Mrs. Bateman lives. And I was like, Mr. Bateman lives here too.
Yeah, don't worry.
But I guess
just a blip on the side.
I get such a kick out of that.
Yeah.
Halloween, the kids come up and they just adore her, and she adores them right back.
Oh, yeah.
It was meant to be.
Well, you can tell. I mean, it's a very natural.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
the staff at Lagodi. Wow.
Yeah. We're very lucky. I mean, and one of our choices, why, Aaron being from here, it was kind of the goal. But I mean, educationally wise, like to be able to know that my kids are in good hands, and I know those individuals. I know they know my wife. I mean, it's in terms of the families, kind of just those layers are built there where you feel comfortable. These people are going to have my kids for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Like, how is that going to go? And you feel there's a calmness. There's a ability to say, all right, I know they're going to have a good day, and I know they're going to be around good people. So, and I know Lynn's going to open the door for them on the way when I'm picking them up at the end of the day. I get to have a moment with her. So,
and she could retire too, but it's always year by year. But but she has no plans right now, probably because we live in a small house and the two of us there 8 hours a day. But. Yeah, but you know what? I feel a little guilty because I am retired. So every morning I get up, I take her to school, which is 2 blocks away, drop her off, pick her up for lunch, take her back, get her home from school, and she can ride the school bus.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's right there. I mean, they can hop off the bus and be ready to go. I don't think they have. I'm sure they wouldn't have any issues with that. That'd be just a normal drop off for anybody else.
I feel like I should take her picture on the first day of school and the last day of school.
Get her sign held up, yeah.
But I love it, and she does too, and that's just a blessing for us.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and I'll describe this as like in a video game terms. You're in your side quest period.
Yeah.
So this is just the point of your lives where you've done the main.
Mm-hmm.
Let's have some fun. Yeah. Like if you're gonna work, it's just in terms of there's no reason to sit at home at 8 hours and stare at the wall all day. What can I do? And I mean, what a great way to be able to have an impact on the community still. But I mean, especially for you two now, the travels I get to see. I feel like a lot of these things now in your life are you're like, I'm gonna go have some fun with this stuff now, and to be able to do that together, and you've got the retirement over, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what kind of trouble you can get into with all these side gigs. And I think this very podcast sort of born from that in the terms of what am I going to do with my time? What kind of impact I can have? I mean, personally, just being as a person that has viewed these, has got to know these individuals, got to hear the history of the Lagodi, it was just a light bulb inside of me that when let's get to know Greg now. Yeah. I mean, to take that opportunity today, it's been fantastic. For you guys, as far as, you had one child, was ever intentions, coming from a larger family. Miss Perry is fantastic. One of my best friends, I knowing her through Aaron. Yeah. You got it right the first time, so I kind of understand, maybe just call her square right after the first one, but intentional in that sense, or was it just one where...
Yeah. Well, we felt like Perry was triplets. She was a ball of energy too. So we felt like we had our fill.
You had you.
The truth of the matter, though, was with Lynn's health issues at the time, the gestational diabetes, that they felt that it wasn't a good idea, probably, to have another child.
Okay.
And to be honest, never thought about it.
Yeah.
Never thought about, well, what if we would have had a little boy or what have you. Perry was just such a joy, until the teenage years. Just like everybody else.
We'll edit that out. It's fine, Perry.
No, we won't. But no, she wasn't in any trouble in her teenage years, but she was just.
Oh, I've got some stories for you.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, that's for you guys, and but she was really the first grandchild.
Yeah.
So she was so loved by everybody, in the family, and so no, never really thought about a second.
No, that's all right. You get it right. There's no reason
And she's got three.
And she does, yeah. And now she was an engineer as well.
She is an engineer.
Now I know. In terms, I was for Toyota for a long time, and so kind of following in Mom's footsteps there as far as that goes.
She did. She went to the University of Evansville. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because we were very proud that Perry was a Lilly Scholar winner.
Oh yeah.
And because I remember being at work, getting the call that she had won the Lilly, and I felt like we had won the lottery.
No, because to a degree,
you really
have.
Because she could pick any school she wants in the state
of Indiana.
I know you're very close to Rose-Hulman, I know out there.
Yes.
But she went to the University of Evansville, which is a great school, and they got an engineering degree. Yeah, had some really good jobs at Toyota. She's now at Crane. Her and her husband Jim Weber both.
Yeah,
and why not? Everybody else works there.
It seems
everybody in my family does.
You get that application right, you get that keywords down. That's the way to get it. Might as well join the crowd.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, for you now, was it during that time of Kimball? Were you doing announcing? Were you dabbling with that world still, just to kind of maintain the? I look at it as a little more beyond than just a hobby. But was that kind of in the terms still in the radars, that part of your life?
It was actually during Kimball, but let's go back to Indiana State if we can a little bit, because I always did work in radio, even at school, and actually was fortunate enough to do play-by-play for Indiana State University baseball for a couple of years, and they were very, very good years for Indiana State baseball. So I got a lot of good experience in college to do that, and then when I was in Fort Wayne, I was able to do some football games and do some sports, just color analysis, not play-by-play, but kind of kept in it. And that was it for a long time. And then one year, I think it was 2004, so we're going from the 80s to 2004, I'm working at Kimball, and I'm on my way home. I want to say night shift, but I don't think I would have got a call from 6 o'clock in the morning, so it probably wasn't. But Larry Hembry, who owned WRZR at the time, called me and said, I think it was along the lines that Alan Williams can't make it tonight. Can you take stats for me and help me out? And I'm like, well, wow, I haven't done this in 20 years.
Okay, let's
whatever it is. But I think it was at Vincent's Reveille, or it was on the road. And Larry knew me. Larry and I were good friends, and he kind of knew my background a little bit. He knew I loved sports, so I guess I was somebody he thought of.
Yeah.
So I did that night, and I don't know why I kept continuing to do it the rest of the year, but I did, actually with Alan Williams and Larry. So we kind of had a three-man crew on occasion. But so 2004 is when I started, and never stopped. Yeah. So here we are now 20 years later.
Yeah, it's legitimately 20 years. Yeah. That's a long time. Now, you started out with across the board, baseball, softball, basketball. Were you preference at the time? Like, what was kind of where you were like, this is my happy place?
I never thought about that, but again, ironically, the same year. Lagodi had some good teams. In 2004, we lost in a heartbreaker in the regional, I think it's at White River Valley. And then somehow I was able to do the broadcast for softball, and they were up at what was then, I think, kind of the state finals, if you will, I can't even remember where it was, Plainfield or somewhere like that. Then the next year, I was doing play-by-play, and we went to the state championship on a tip-in at the buzzer, and I went crazy along with everybody else, and I've been so fortunate to be able to call some of those great moments, including a couple of state championships. And
more recently,
so many volleyball runner-ups. Volleyball, who would have thought, broadcasting volleyball. And that's one of my favorite sports to broadcast. And the success that Lagodi's had over the years, it just
It lends
it
itself
lends
to
itself
a
to the
nice story.
enjoyment.
When they're
Yeah.
bad, it's a little harder to drum it up,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure. But
Rarely have they been bad, but
they've
they
not
have
ever
been.
really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it does. But I think about that. So when you're really bad, how does that work? And there were a couple of years where we were really bad. But you know what? You just kind of, when you win a game, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
For the kids or whatever. And you do get, even though I don't really know the kids that well, you get attached to them and you
Right.
want them to do well. And
Well, you see their frustrations, you see their
yeah,
achievements, you get to
yeah.
watch them as they grow in terms of
Mhm.
on the court, and I mean, it just kind
Mhm.
of you've got that bird's eye view of
Yeah,
these games and then the intensity of it. I mean, um, yeah, we had an exchange student last year who was a
yeah,
cheerleader, and so we got to. Erin was a very much a volleyballer in her day, and
yeah.
so I knew there was but going to these games and
Mhm.
feeling the energy. I mean, and from a small town, like just
Mhm.
the vibration of the people there,
Yeah,
enjoying it is beautiful to watch. And one where you get that bug, you get a little bit of
yeah.
that under your skin. You go, well, I enjoy
Yeah,
this.
and that's the kind of the identity of Lagodi, of course.
Yeah,
Sports, basketball, but again, the softball program's been really good. The
yeah,
volleyball program, the tennis program, baseball
yeah.
program. So everywhere you look, and of course, we won a girls basketball state championship just a
And
few
then a
years
runner
ago, and
up, and then
almost another one.
yeah,
And I don't care how long you do it or how many classes there are. When you have an opportunity to win a state championship,
yeah.
it's a community thing,
Oh, very much.
and we took advantage of it,
Yeah,
didn't we?
well, and it's where I
Yeah.
mean, with full representation up there in
Hmm.
Indy. I mean, I know in terms of the way the city was empty,
Yeah.
like we made
Yeah.
everybody made their way up to those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in those moments, I mean, you look back and you kind of have anything that stands out as far as your announcing career, as far as something where you go, oh, I'm gonna remember that one for a while.
Yeah, the Bard Hill tip-in that I talked about at Seymour
Yeah,
um, got us to the state championship for the first time in 30 years.
yeah,
And even though it was again a different class, the place was full. You've never been to the Seymour Gym?
mm
Huge.
okay,
And the Washington Hatchets
yeah,
happened to be down there at the
yeah,
time, and everybody was in black and gold rooting for Lagodi, and Lagodi's rooting for Washington. And just when you thought Lagodi was going to lose, a tip in at the buzzer, it was pandemonium, and my call was crazy. You couldn't understand what I was
just
saying,
blubbering on,
but
but
I
yeah,
was along with everybody else. I'm a
yeah.
fan too, guys.
Oh no,
And I remember Bob Toy. Bob told me he was working in a CPA office right up here
yeah,
on the square, and he said when he heard that tip in go in, he ran around the building outside, if I
outside,
recall, Bob, and just screaming.
hooting and hollering.
I mean, here we
Yeah,
are going to the state finals,
yeah,
and we were back. We were back,
as yeah.
and that definitely stands out. Um, the volleyball runs stand out, of course. Perry playing and Aaron
Yeah.
playing, and but getting to the state championship, so many games. Hinkle Fieldhouse in volleyball stands out. We, people on the rafters, just they were metal rafters. Have you been to
Yeah.
Hinkle?
Yeah.
So the metal rafters, I'm doing a ball game down on the floor, and you just can't hear yourself think, but you love it
Yeah.
because you're that close to a state championship, which we didn't get.
Oh, yeah.
But your head hurts and everything, but that stands out. The girls' state championships, the boys' state championship in 2012 was so special for our family, Tyler, because I had a nephew, Colin,
Hmm.
which is Sammy's son. He was the starting point guard on that team,
Oh, yeah.
and we just lost mom a year before, but she was able to see him play,
Yeah.
but not the state championship. So that, among others, probably stood out the most. That state championship.
Yeah.
But every season is different. Wyatt Street. Here's a kid who
Yeah.
was a student manager.
I love Wyatt. Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
Wyatt?
Wyatt. I had him in class myself. So.
He was a kid who was student manager his senior year. Never got to play. He was very small, of course, and but good athlete,
Yeah.
very good athlete, but never really got to play. Well, Coach Haywood put him in.
Oh, I remember him draining that.
You remember that?
Yeah.
And he drained a three-pointer. I think
Yeah.
the only shot he would have ever taken.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you can't wrap it up with a better bow.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
a fantastic kid. I mean, just
Yeah.
like you said, there's some people that you meet and that
Yeah.
just they're he's a good kid on the inside, and to
yeah.
provide him that opportunity,
Oh.
just the chance, and
Yeah.
then for him to hit it, like
It's a storybook.
it's just perfect.
But anyway, so they had asked me to put together, the school did, a highlight of what you're just asking me,
Mhm.
my career basically. and had a picture of myself and Lynn, and they were planning on putting it up, I think, up near where the radio booth is up there.
Oh yeah.
And then the renovations to the school came, and that never got up there, along with many other things. But I still have that. And among the highlights is the shot, the Wyatt Street shot.
Well, those are the.
It's a feel-good moment.
Those are
it's a Rudy moment.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. No, that's the perfect way of describing it.
Yeah, and so I'm sure, after I get out here, I'm thinking, oh well, boy, that was a highlight too. But there's been so many of them, and I think so many yet to come.
Oh, hopefully, and the joy you get from that. I mean, just in terms of, you start out radio, TV, film, you get that radio time, and then you're getting to do these live, where this is happening in front of you, and your ability to describe that to the listener is one where, if you don't do it well, nobody's going to listen. And you've got that voice. I mean, to be the voice of the Lagodi Lions. Was there a point in time where you were like, I know with the radio career, you're all voice. It's not about the looks. It's about the way you sound. I mean, did you ever feel TV was an option, or was it just sort of I know my niche and I'm gonna don't want to?
Actually, in college, when I was at Indiana State, I was working in radio, and there was a sports anchor job, a sports weekend job at Channel 2, WTWO.
Yeah.
So you remember Mark Allen?
Yeah.
Right. So I went in to interview. And I remember Mark asking me, because I was going to school pretty well full time. And he said, what made you think that you've got the time to dedicate to this in the weekend? And I remember saying right then, and I've been in human resources forever, so now I know not to say it. But I said to him, I'm not sure.
Let me be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I'm sure I followed up with something. I'll give my best.
Yeah.
I'll give my best, and I didn't get the job. They did hire a female, and so in my mind, I'm saying they hired a female because at the time you didn't have any female announcers. But I don't know that
it wasn't me. It's just
and I was fine with it because I really didn't have because you were stretched. But yeah, that's the only time I ever thought about TV. No, even around here, once I got into local radio, and I do realize it's local radio.
Yeah.
I never ever thought about progressing my career because that wasn't my career.
Right.
I had other careers, and that wasn't my career, but it was a hobby. Yeah, I'd get paid a little for it, but it was my hobby.
Right.
And a hobby that we had listeners and still do from all around the world.
Yeah.
I tell the story, and there's a video I have out from the 2012 season called A View from the Booth. And one of the best stories, somebody who I'm going to interview before too long, you know her well, is Kelly Floyd.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Kelly's husband happened to be, he's not from Lagodi.
No.
He's from South Carolina or wherever. I don't know.
I believe, yeah.
But happened to be over, I'm going to say Kuwait, but that's probably not right. But
you were close.
Was it? Okay, close. But anyway, so it's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and he's listening, to this state championship game or whatever it was,
wherever you're at,
semi-state or whatever, and he's running around yelling himself. He's caught in the fever.
Yeah.
And his barrack mates are asking him what's going on, and it was a semi-state.
What's happening, and why are you shouting?
Because he said, I think we're going to go to the state finals in high school basketball, and the next week they were there listening to it with him.
Yeah.
And, and I get Barry Stuckey. I'm going to mention you, Barry, because Barry, I never met him. He lives in Toronto, and he lives in Australia.
Oh, wow.
6 months of the year.
Yeah.
He's got it covered. He listens to every game, and he messages me about, just like he's there, like, maybe, what happened here, what happened there.
Right.
And those connections, it's just unbelievable when you think about it, the opportunity that you have.
Worldwide
today.
And from a local radio
station.
station.
And not just me, but anybody that broadcasts in radio.
Oh, for sure.
And,
to do it for what, again, we're a city of 2,500.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not anything in terms of, we're not a booming metropolis by any means. But to have people across the planet that are interested, one, to hear your voice. I mean, a lot of it has to do with the fact that you're good at it. I mean, it's to toot your own horn, but you've got that ability to convey what is happening in front of you in a manner. Your emotional kind of range in that is one where I can very much see you doing an MLB game. Like, you've got those abilities. Now, granted, we're blessed to have you here in just little Lagodi, but to have that worldwide reach is something where 20, 30 years ago, probably not quite so much. But in the world we're in today,
Yeah.
it's just an app away as far as
Yeah.
being able to listen in
Yeah.
and follow along and still feel that connection
Mhm.
to these small towns and
Yeah.
these teams.
I appreciate
I mean, they're
it.
not people that they might even really truly know as far as
Yeah.
actual knowing them, but
Mhm.
they're from Lagodi, and I'm
Yeah.
going to cheer them on.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I don't know how good a broadcaster I am, but I think the ability that I have is to be able to talk to people. And when you're broadcasting, that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're talking to people. They may not be in front of you, but you know that you're trying to
But they're
describe,
listening. Yeah.
but you're really just kind of having a conversation with the person listening.
Yeah.
And Coach Wagner or Alan Williams, whoever's with me, um, and have fun. And I think I have that ability to, I don't care how much downtime you have, there's always something to talk about.
Right.
People
Yeah.
may not.
Timeouts or you've got some stuff to discuss
Yeah.
no matter what.
Just get back to basketball.
Yeah.
Don't talk about the old days.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks. I'm an
Sorry.
old guy.
Oh, somebody scored. I didn't mean to.
Yeah, I'm an old guy, and we
Yeah.
had great
We
days
got
back then.
lots of.
Lots to
Yeah.
talk about. So that'll never stop because I really enjoy that. But no, for the most part, people have been very, very kind to me, and I'll do it as long as they let me. In fact, we were concerned. Larry sold the station, of course, in the last year, and we didn't know Alan
How
Williams
that
and I
would
were
go.
really about the only staff, and we didn't know if there was going to be Lagodi Lion
And available.
basketball,
Yeah.
baseball, anything. So we started thinking behind the scenes, what do we want to do, Alan? We want to
How are we
Facebook.
gonna-
How are we
yeah.
going to do this? And then we found out that Dwayne Shake was going to buy it. Dwayne is the owner of Shake Broadcasting, and all of a sudden we were fine.
Yeah.
Because we knew that Dwayne would invest.
Support. And,
Dwayne's another one I'm going to do an Indiana neighbor with.
oh,
soon.
fantastic. Yeah.
But Dwayne was able to connect communities, and we knew, and now we're doing more sports, than ever.
Yeah.
So we were fortunate
Able
there.
to kind of grow it
Otherwise,
on
you
top.
almost didn't have Lagodi
Yeah.
Lion
Sorry.
basketball
Well,
or baseball.
we
or
would have.
volleyball.
I'm sure there with the community, we would have found some way to
We'd
get
have found
you
a way.
a
We'd have found a
bullhorn
way.
out
Yeah.
there and let you shout it to the streets. We'd be lined up, I'm sure.
Yeah.
With the future, we look at kind of going forward. You've grown this now. This is year 2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
about a year and a half now.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Wow.
I mean, really, to be able to look back
Yeah.
and say, I scroll through the YouTube and see the number of options. You've truly gone from Lagodi neighbor to this Indiana neighbor of who are all these people and what are they doing for our communities?
Mhm.
I mean, it's a fantastic way of kind of having that time capsule in the internet, so to speak,
Mhm.
for us to be able to reflect back on it and see these individuals in 20, 30 years to be able to kind of reflect and go, who really made a difference in this community was here they are.
Yeah.
And so I, in terms of your aspirations for getting to know the Indiana neighbor, is there a direction that you feel like you're going to take this?
It's so many different directions because it's kind of whatever people might be interested in.
Well,
I just did the first Indiana Neighbors Kid
yeah,
because a kid came up to me, Jeff
yeah.
Doyle's daughter, Claire,
yeah.
and said, "Hey, why don't you do an Indiana Neighbors
And
Kid?"
she had a good time. She had a great time with
I
you.
had a great time.
Yeah,
I
I
had a
mean,
great
really.
time. So, that's one thing because I know that there are people who, they deserve to be recognized.
Yeah.
So where's that? The businesses I'd like to do, the first one and one of the only ones I really did was with you guys, with Stephen and Aaron for Harvest Health. And by the way, I applaud you guys so much for what you're doing with the urgent care, with Janet Ballback and those sort of things. So the community needs that. But I don't know. I kind of gauge myself and think, all right, are people still interested in this?
Right.
Are the views falling off? And then something happens.
You crossed 500. I mean, 500 people subscribed. I mean, that's again, for a small town. If we were to look at that, you're talking a quarter of the population almost. If we were to go by numbers alone, so whatever. While it might not feel like a large impact at this point, I mean, I think in terms of history, you'll have a different way of
well,
looking at it.
you talk about history, and I'm so humbled when Bill Green, who's basically Mr. Martin County history, talks to me, and I never really thought of it in that sense until he told me. And I'm going to use a word that he used because it humbled me so much, and I'll probably tear up, but my face was just red. But he said, God put you on this earth to preserve, believe it or not, preserve the history of these people in this town who made an impact, and just went on and on about that. And that's how he feels. Most people don't feel that way, but it got me to thinking, okay, that's a direction I want to go into.
Yeah.
Let's talk to the veterans. Let's talk to the historians. It's endless what you can do, and the people in this community who have those experiences is just finding them, right? And people suggesting them and what have you. But
Right.
um, aspirations, I don't have any aspirations to go, get a Don Fisher or to get anybody else. Doug Bradley helps me with those connections.
Right.
If I get them, great. I love them. But
Yeah.
my point is to stay here and try to get the neighbors who have an impact. Many who have told me, no, thank you.
Well,
I don't like to talk about myself.
Humble as
Absolutely.
far as in terms
Yeah.
of just the ability to be able to converse about yourself is.
But they've got such stories.
We know we want to be able to draw those out of them. It's the beauty of trying to convince them to have those moments to feel free enough to be able to explain their life and just the beauty that comes from these. We get to in such a fast-paced world and to take the time and to just have a conversation that can be kind of cataloged and for those moments that to highlight these are the people that did this to allow me to be here, and so for someone else in the future to be like, what, that's what inspired me, and to be able to kind of continue that on. Small towns don't necessarily always survive unless they have the right type of people in those towns,
right?
And to have the mentality of, like Bill said, to preserve, to show the future. Hey, these are the people that made Lagodi Lagodi. It's a very much a small town with a big heart. There's lots of people that make that big heart up, and to be able to get their stories and even your story, to be able just to have a conversation about your history in this town. Something that I think, while the ripple might be small today in terms of 10 years, 20 years down the line, it could be much larger. I mean, it's just a catalog where you get to create this Indiana neighbor, and such a beautiful thing to be able to kind of.
Thank you. And what I would really love to have out of it is for people to realize that, yes, you are recording some history here. And it doesn't have to be me to do that.
Right.
It could be you talking to your 98-year-old grandfather.
Right.
Sitting down, getting his story on video.
Yeah.
I've always encouraged people to do that. It doesn't take much.
No.
I got a little phone tripod.
You should see our crazy setup.
Yeah. and a sit down, which I did with my father-in-law.
Yeah.
Just on a couch and then out on the porch. And it's just a conversation that you would have anyway.
Right.
But let's find out about your life, Dad, Grandpa, whatever it is. So I would encourage all of you people to look in that sense of your parents or grandparents and get that story. When we were in Hoopeston, Illinois, and we were meeting with Dad's cousin, one thing she said was she regrets so much not learning more about her family
along the way.
So I want to make sure, that as best we can, that people do that.
Yeah. Well, if we can learn from others' mistakes to say, hey, this is something I regret. Let me have the chance to be able to do this. I appreciate you for even allowing me a chance. This is something where, in my world, I've always loved people. I was an instructor at Indiana State for about 15 years. Had the large classrooms, enjoyed those communication in that time to get to know people, and be able just to spread the stories that have an impact for other people. If you can change one person's life by kind of, this is how my life was affected by these things, this is what it changed for me, and allows another person to be able to grow from that, it's a wonderful thing to be able to kind of preserve. So
yeah, I hope so.
I appreciate you taking the time today. Anything else for our viewers that you felt like in terms of the Greg Bateman story?
I guess the only thing that I want to convey is, I'm retired, but I'm busier than ever. Not getting paid for any of this, but I am. I am getting paid in a sense. But I guess the key for me is I try to be positive, but when you wake up each morning, whose day can you make today?
Right.
And if I can do that by recognizing them, do it. And understand the impact that people have and getting their story and recognizing them. And having something to look forward to. And I look forward to doing some of these things, sitting down even with you.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed that you like to do these things. And you're very good at it. I think you're terrific at it, and I appreciate it. Probably too much because we've gone on for 9 hours. But you didn't see the other 8.
Well,
but I appreciate you I don't know if I asked you or you asked me. I really don't remember, but
Well, no, it was a light bulb moment for me. I had that. There's times in life where you get that tingle inside,
yeah,
and I was listening. I believe I just went in the car. I mean, kind of
yeah,
listening along to one of them, and I go, let's get to know Greg.
yeah,
I picked this. I mean, like you said, it's as simple as just be the reason that somebody
hmm
smiles
yeah,
today. I mean, it's
yeah,
as like, however tiny of little
hmm
of effect you can have. If it's you're putting that positive energy out in the world, it's going to come back on you, and it has for you especially.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. It really has.
and the wonderful life that I get to kind of see from afar and see the amazing relationship you have with your wife. You've raised such an amazing daughter who's gone on to become her own adult and start her own family.
Hmm
You truly have an amazingly blessed life, and to be able to just take a few moments to allow you to understand. I see that, and
hmm
I appreciate you for being able to do those things and to do them the right way. Um, and then to get to enjoy sort of the side quest part of your life where you get to add these little things and do these to make the
Yeah,
world a better place. So
yeah. This is the fun part of life,
yeah,
right?
very
Yeah,
much so.
it's been a fun life. It's been a great ride.
Yeah.
And I've always told people that, well, never really told people. I just thought, I guess, that as long as you've got something to look forward in life, then you're living life.
You're living life.
And I do, and always have, and have been very blessed, and I appreciate the opportunity. I really
Well,
do.
yeah. Well, thank you. And for my first getting to know your Indiana neighbor, Greg Bateman. Greg, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining me today.
Great job,
It's been
Tommy.
a
Great
pleasure.
job. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rebound now. You can expect full court pressure on this made free throw. He makes it. It's 35-34. 17.4 to go. David Strange to Devine with 15. He's got to find Todd Baker. Got to find somebody now with 11. Baker has it with 8. He's going to go up over Jolliffe. No, now he's got to find Bart Hill with 4. Hill to Strange for 3. No good. Hill gets the rebound. They go to the state. Oh my God, they win it. Bart Hill got the offensive glass and put it in, and the Lions win 36-35, and the celebration is unbelievable.
They get it into Ulrich. Ulrich will take a 3. And I never thought I would be able to say it. I'm going to say it. The Lagoni Lions are state champions.